following is a production of Cary TV, the Town of Cary's government access channel.
Hi, and welcome to the December meeting of the Operations Committee. I have on my left Mr. Frantz filling in for Mr. Smith, and then I have Ms. Bush with me. We have 4 items on our agenda for consent. Would either of you like any of the items pulled?
I would like number 2 pulled, please, for discussion.
Okay, recognition and approval of Clean Fuel Advanced Technology Grant. Okay, may I hear a motion for the remaining 3 items to council for approval?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, let's go ahead and talk first about the one that was pulled from consent, the recognition and approval of Clean Fuel Advanced Technology Grant. Mr. Hecht.
Good evening, Council. The staff report you have before you is asking your approval, I'm sorry, to approve a grant in the amount of $121,000 and also matching from our general funds for $40,000 rounded up, and that is for a fuel efficiency. It's really a telematic system, sort of like a GPS system that will go into our vehicles. We've identified 57 Public Works vehicles that we would put those devices in. It is purely for fuel efficiency purposes that will alert the supervisors of users if drivers are not. It's really for eco-driving friendliness. If they're speeding, if they're idling too long, it will alert us to those types of driving operations. And the suggested savings on that is about a 10% fuel savings for those vehicles that we put these on. In addition, as you notice in the staff report, 22 of those units would come with an idle reduction battery, and those would go on utility vehicles that you see parked along the roadways so many times, up on the medians, up on the greenways with our flashers on. Those trucks are always running, they're always idling, and these batteries would eliminate the need for those to be idling all the time. So that's what we're requesting, to approve the receipt of that grant and the matching funds out of the general fund.
Mr. Smith? Excuse me. I'm so used to Mr. Smith.
I've been called worst. It helps me understand just a little bit better, but the couple questions. The idle reduction battery, is this just basically the installation of an additional battery into these vehicles?
That is correct.
Okay.
And we do have 6 of them now. We got a grant, it wasn't this past year, last year, for 6 of them that we've put in some of our trucks and found them to be very helpful and useful for us. So we have 6 now, we get 22
Does the
more.
vehicle's charging system charge that battery, or does it have to be recharged when it comes back
The
to
vehicle system charges that battery, correct.
All right, this would be a 1-year pilot program. Obviously, pilots, we try them out, see how they work. Sometimes we continue them, sometimes not. if we were to continue this program, is there an additional ongoing annual cost to keep expanding it, or do we putting these batteries in the GPS units and we're done, or?
Great, very correct. There would be, if we certainly find it to be useful and advantageous, obviously the grant wouldn't take place anymore, so we'd have to evaluate the cost effectiveness of it if we want to, because obviously this would be costing truly about $160,000. So we would evaluate that and say, is it worth $160,000 in years further to get about 60 of these types of devices? Yes, there's not really ongoing costs. It's a one-time installation cost and to buy the product and put it in the vehicle. And then there's not an annual cost associated with it so much as do we want to continue if it's advantageous, continue with the program.
Okay, because there were some emails. Actually, Ms. Bush asked a great question. You know, the 10% reduction in fuel. What does that mean in dollars?
Yes, correct.
And I think you conservatively estimated $45,000, but we're going to spend $41,000 to save $45,000. Is that going to be kind of the same thing every year, or I don't want to create a lot of busy work and stuff to save?
I think ideally we spend about $2 million a year in fuel.
Okay.
And again, we have about 500 vehicles, actually 558 to be exact. So it's about, this grant per se is for 10% of our fleet. So just to clarify the email thread, this alone will probably save about $20,000 in fuel for these 50 vehicles. Okay. So thinking we're spending 40 to save 20, it's like a 2-year payback, which is pretty nice. Question well taken. Would you spend 40 to save 40? Probably, because again, that's 40 is a one-time expenditure. You'd save 40 every year. So we're probably looking at spending 40 to save 20 to 30,000, but that's per year with a one-time expenditure.
What's the expected life expectancy of the batteries? Obviously, you put them in for 5 years, whatever, we're saving money, saving fuel, but then those batteries are going to eventually need replacing.
The ones we've put in now, again, they're 2 years old. To my knowledge, we haven't had any issues. I'd have to get back to you on a true life expectancy. I do not know the transfer to that, but I don't know. I'd have to get back to you on that one for sure.
But at the end of the day, we're going to do a 1-year pilot thing, monitor it, learn from it, see if this is something we want to continue, and then the council will then decide to continue this program?
Oh, by all means, we would not buy any of these things without coming back and making sure it makes sense for us. Again, without this grant, I don't think I'd be standing up here anyway, for sure.
Okay.
I think it's really important to note that it's not really a 2-year payback, because the true cost is $160,000. It may not be from our coffers that we're getting the 121, but it's still money that taxpayers have put into it. So it's really an 8-year payback. And how realistic is it that these batteries will either have a life or I don't know what part of the cost goes into retrofitting the vehicle versus what part of the cost is actually the battery. But I just wonder if an 8-year payback is really feasible.
Yeah, that's and to retrofit, there's really nothing to retrofit. We've put these in already at very little. There's not much to do with the vehicle at all on the battery part of it.
So it's really material costs.
Yeah, and then again, there's two different animals here. You got the GPS units, the telematic GPSs. That again monitor driving habits, which again we have now a new standard procedure. We're trying, to tie in with council's goals of reducing our emissions and our fuel usage. So it is tying within our goals. But again, a perfect, question. It truly is $160,000 for these products we put in these cars.
But it's not just to save money. This is also to reduce the clean emissions, and we're getting this grant partially because Wake County is so low and has such poor air quality. Is that?
Oh, very true. Mm-hmm.
So this will actually make a big impact on the clean air and improve our pollution rates and reduce the emissions and such. So
yeah, I think there's other, advantages that aren't in black and white. Certainly your emissions, the air quality, and all the other things that come along with is reducing the fuel usage and emissions as well, sure.
Will there be some way to measure that?
I think so. I mean, we've already identified the vehicles, and we clearly have the data in years past on what these vehicles have been using in fuel, and we'll certainly look at that going forward and what this does for us, yeah.
Okay.
I would agree that it would make an impact. I don't know that it makes a big impact. But I guess every little bit helps.
The numbers will tell, yeah.
So I look forward to seeing what happens after a year, what the data shows, and was it a success or not, and keep us informed.
You got it.
Okay,
Thanks.
great. All right, we'll move that forward under consent for the full council. All right, our next item is the Walnut Street improvement options associated with street improvements projects, and we have Ms. Cove. We also have had a citizen ask to speak, so after Ms. Cove gives her presentation, we'll allow that speaker to talk to us for up to 3 minutes.
Thank you, and good afternoon, Council. This item is to request your consideration of options associated with the Walnut Street resurfacing project. I think it's very clear that everyone can agree that Walnut Street from Kildare Farm to Cary Town Center needs to be resurfaced. I think there's no question about that whatsoever. The question for you, and for the question that we've been asking our citizens, is since our resurfacing happens on a 50 to 20 or greater cycle, we wanted to take this opportunity to see, before we invested in this new pavement, to evaluate options for what the road should or could look like in the future. So outlined in your staff report, we evaluated 2 specific options. Option A is rebuilding Walnut Street in the existing lane configuration, which is 2 lanes in each direction and a center turn lane. Option B includes rebuilding Walnut Street with a median, 1 lane in each direction, and striped bike lanes. The town did host a public workshop in October. It was very well attended. The comments from those meetings, as well as some subsequent comments we continue to receive, were included in your staff report, as well as some news articles and letters to the editor. In addition, just this week, we received a citizen petition that was forwarded to each of you. As noted in the staff report, in addition to the public comments, we also looked at some additional considerations in developing our staff recommendation. We looked at similar roadways that had medians, Crabtree Crossing, Lock Highlands, Lockmere, Crescent Green, looked at the operation of those roadways. We looked at some other lane reduction or road diet projects such as East Chatham, Kildare Farm, and Lake Pine. We did talk with NCDOT and reviewed research on the safety benefits of medians and also as the impacts of medians. We considered operational issues such as mail delivery, furniture deliveries along the corridor. We reviewed the safety concerns expressed by the public primarily with the police and fire departments, and they have no public safety concerns with either option. We considered town goals for multimodal facilities, as well as facilities that contribute to Cary's attractive appearance. And overall, with all those items on the table for consideration, staff is recommending moving forward with option B, the median option. And I'd be happy to answer some questions after the citizen presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Callaway, would you like to come and address the council?
My name is Sid Cowley, Sidney, or I'm better known as Sid. I live at 418 Walnut Street, and I'm here to talk about the Walnut Street paving project tonight. I want to thank the council for letting me talk for just a minute. I don't think this is normal for your procedures, but the petition that you should have seen by now, I'm sure it's been passed out, is really 2 of them, okay? One petition is signed by residents, owners, living on Walnut and adjacent parallel and intersecting streets to Walnut. Every structure along Walnut Street has a signature representing it, asking you not to put the medians in. The only exception is Burger King up on the corner of Ryan. The credit union at 531 Walnut Street is represented by signature of Vice President Mr. Cobb. This business has hundreds of customers. If you don't believe that's a busy place, you go in there on a Monday after the state employees have getting paid. It's like ants going in and out. If we poll these users of the credit union, most of them, I don't venture a percentage, but a very great percentage of them would be against this. because they use that street to turn left in there, and it's just going to create a problem for them. The church at 217 Walnut Street is represented by its pastor. Again, most of this congregation would object to this if they were asked. We haven't asked them. The other petition has signatures from users of Dad Dunham Park up there. They are adamant about not wanting the thing. There's a tennis club that meets there 3 days a week that has, I think, 80-something members. And my biggest thing I get from them when I go in there and ask them if they know about it and explain it to them, they say, why? Why are they doing this? And I'm telling them the only reason I'm giving to give you is they're trying to make it look pretty. But the one most devastating thing about this whole concept to me is what it could possibly do to emergency situations. The medians could slow response time for emergency service enough to cause a death. In some instances, a minute or less is critical. Just ask any emergency responder. Councilmember Ms. Bush had the forethought to ask the fire department about response time. She shared this information with me when I inquired about response times. I knew she had this memorandum in hand already. I'd been told by a member of the fire department. As much as I appreciate the great job the fire department does, and we do have a great one here in Cary. I had a house fire back in January. They responded at my house in 4 minutes. 4 minutes. If it hadn't responded so quickly, I would have had a much greater loss of property. But I feel obligated to point out some things that I don't see in this memo. I did make some notes to the memo, and I gave her copies, and due to time here tonight, I will not, I gave her a copy, and due to time here tonight, I will not expand on it. I'll probably do it at the full council meeting rather than here tonight. But the main thing is there's several vehicles like school buses, garbage trucks, vehicles that stop to do their business along the street there that are wider than, I measured several of them, they measure 9'6". A fire truck measures 8'6". You add that together and that's wider than the pavement. That means they got to get up on the median to get around. This is not good. A fire truck marred up on that median and a car burning down the street with somebody trapped in it ain't gonna look good. Ain't gonna set good on the town either. I hope Ms. Bush will share that information with the whole council, by the way, but I will probably point it out anyway on council night. And the only other thing I can say to you is please do not force these unwanted medians on us petition signers, the people who would be most affected. And I haven't touched the bottom of the bucket on people that's opposed. I don't know where you're getting people that's for it. I have spoke to over 200 people, well over 200. I have encountered 4 people, 4. One of them that wouldn't sign the petition. One of them wouldn't sign it because of their job. They was afraid it might reflect on their job. They're a state DOT employee. One of them was a biker. He liked to bike. 2 of them thought it would look better. But when you take such a small percentage as that, and what I got to say is, if there is a slight possibility that this is going to affect emergency vehicles, getting to people with heart attacks, strokes, people trapped in cars, then it's not worth having the median there. If you do away with the median, you eliminate all this. we've been there for years just like we are. Why don't we continue it why don't we just pave the street? If you want a bike lane, put it there on what's there. A bike lane will not be safer if you take a 20-foot of street, bikes up against the curb, going down the street. It gives the car plenty of room to get over in the left-hand lane and pass a biker. If you put a 12-foot lane in there and a 4-foot bike lane, that's going to force that car right over against that biker. Somebody on a cell phone going down there, going to be a broke-up biker. Thank you. I really appreciate you allowing me to speak.
Ms. Cove? All right, I guess we're ready to ask some questions. Ms. Bush, do you want to start since you had the memo regarding the fire safety and response?
Certainly, thank you. Could you speak to some of the questions that Mr. Cowley brought up with regards to the width of the lanes and other emergency vehicles?
Sure, I'd be happy to. Just for clarification, the lane width of option B would be a 12-foot travel lane, a 4-foot striped bike lane, and there is a 2-foot gutter section. So it actually ends up being wider than the 16 feet that you normally hear us talk about. So that the numbers that using his numbers that he said, those two vehicles would fit side by side through there. Plus, our emergency vehicles could also get up on the median if they needed to.
Sorry, let me make sure. So it's a 2-foot gutter?
2-foot gutter, 4-foot bike lane, and then a 12-foot pavement. So 18 feet from curb to
Okay.
curb.
And can you or maybe a representative from the fire department speak to the response time for those who are watching and
Sure.
didn't get to see my lovely memo?
Chief Cooper can help me with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Council. Thank you, Mr. Cowley, for the kind comments. The fire department was involved in a kickoff meeting. We were able to view the diagram and the maps and the street detail, and we do not have a problem with either option there. We feel like we could safely navigate around a stopped vehicle. If there wasn't room, we could access the curb. We evaluated really all our response options in regard to response times. One, obviously driving around a vehicle. If we were proceeding from the other direction and needed to stop in front of a resident, it really only adds 35 feet to that residence, which would not be an issue. So we would stop in the opposing lane to get across to that residence. It wouldn't pose a problem for us to do that in operations. If the fire apparatus actually had to proceed up to an intersection and make a U-turn to go back, it did add 40 seconds in the trial that we tested, and that was a response from the fire station on Southeast Maynard.
Mm-hmm. And with regards to, potential traffic as well, you agree with Ms. Cove that there's enough space for emergency vehicle and maybe the largest of the vehicles to pass safely? Is that the fire department's contention that if there was a garbage truck, let's say,
Yes,
pulled
ma'am.
over, that there would be safe distance to pass?
Yes, ma'am. There is, as Ms. Cove indicated, there's 16 feet of lane and 2 foot of gutter space. We could pass most vehicles safely in doing that. If there was a larger vehicle stopped, our drivers do, from time to time, go up onto the curb or go up onto the median to go around vehicles if we have to, but we do that safely. And we don't foresee that as a problem. Given the other streets of similar design throughout the town, it hasn't posed a problem for us.
What about, I have a question, and I don't know if you're the right person or if maybe somebody from the police department is the right person, about the safety implications of having more cars doing U-turns. Oh, Ms. Cove, okay, thank you.
I can try that, and that's one of the reasons we actually talked to NCDOT. They've implemented a lot of median projects across the state, and in this case, we looked at being able to, most SUVs and all cars being able to make that U-turn safely. Some larger vehicles could actually swerve out into the intersection and use a little bit more of that pavement. Otherwise, they might have to go down to another intersection and do that. But in general, U-turns are relatively safe. In DOT studies actually found safer than making left turns out across 4 lanes of traffic.
Is there one of these two options that is perceived to be safer? I mean, we've looked at this for aesthetic reasons, but is one safer than the other?
The staff recommendation is option B, with safety being one of the reasons for that. There's a lot of left turns out of driveways. There's about a little over 40 driveways along that corridor, and with left turns out of there, that's inherently a less safe movement than making a right turn. Because when you make a right turn, you're only looking at traffic, trying to judge traffic coming from one direction.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Ms. Bush, do you have any other?
I have one other question. One of the compared roads, the comparative similar ADTs, were roads without this large amount of residences. Do we have anything like this within the town? Because the Lake Pine, even Kildare Farm, there's a few residents on one side, but do we have anything like this in Cary?
Probably the closest was Lockmere Drive, and there's some residential houses along Lockmere as well as Crabtree Crossing, and those are the sections that have one lane in each direction and the median. The road diets on Kildare Farm are a little bit different because you could still theoretically turn left out of those residential driveways. But Crescent Green, Lock Highlands, Crabtree Crossing, those have houses along those median sections.
Do they have the comparative amount of traffic?
Lockmere has about 6,000 vehicles per day, so about half as much as Walnut Street currently, and what Walnut Street's projected to be. We don't have an exact match.
It's not apples for apples, but it's as close as you can get. Okay.
Correct.
Don?
I don't have questions, I just have comments.
Is it unsafe having these cars pulling out into only one lane? I mean, they're coming out of their driveway. Right now, they'd be pulling, trying to do a left, but they'd be going right. But if they're backing out, they're going to be backing out into this one lane. That seems like there might be some safety implications to having them do that.
I guess my professional opinion would be that it would not be any less safe than backing out in the current situation.
Okay.
I mean, even if you're backing out, you have two lanes that you're trying to judge, backing out into that roadway.
Okay. All right. No more questions? No more questions. Comments?
Okay. First, thank you so much, Ms. Cove. Thanks to Kyle Hubert and everybody else that worked on this. I genuinely appreciate all your efforts. I think as some of you that are here concerning this particular issue are well aware, the town has made a priority, or Old Cary downtown inside the Maynard Loop, a priority of ours. I think you all have seen a lot of investment, a lot of projects, a lot of things happening. And this is just one more extension of that. We were getting ready to repave Walnut Street, and staff, as they so awesomely do, says, is there a better way to do this? So they looked at it and came up with a couple options for the council to consider. This one does have a focus on aesthetics, public safety, and some others. And I really applaud all their efforts to get the citizen input, meet with the residents, have the workshop. I actually attended one of the workshops, spoke with a number of people. I think it was great how you had all the diagrams laid out so people could really visualize what this was going to look like. I'm very, very familiar with Walnut Street. I live at the corner of Cornwall and Tanglewood. When I leave my house, I take Walnut. I just don't have a reason to go out to Maynard for some reason. I only go out on Walnut. So I drive Walnut about 10 times a day, and it is in dire need of repaving, especially after the sidewalk work and some of the infrastructure improvements that we've made there. So it needs to happen sooner than later. As someone who lives right off of Walnut, I was really excited when I first learned about this from an aesthetic standpoint. But the more and more I tried to put myself in people's shoes that lived on Walnut Street, I kind of came to the realization that I don't know that if I lived on Walnut Street, I'd want this out in front of my house. Would I like having to only be able to make a right turn out of my driveway every time? Would I like having to come home from work, have to drive by my house, look at it, go down the street, make a U-turn, and come back to it every day? And I just don't think that I would prefer that. To me, it's aesthetics versus function. I think the road functions really well the way it is right now. It just needs repaved in a bad way. I think maybe there's some other things we can do to improve aesthetics along that corridor. But at the end of the day, I feel like I just got to put myself in the shoes of the people that live on Walnut Street, and those that have contacted me and that I've heard from. I can't even walk the dog in the front yard without somebody walking by and asking me about Walnut Street these days. So I've had quite a bit of conversations about it, and there are quite a few people that would like to see this. There really are. They don't live on Walnut Street. So for those reasons, I tend to support option B, repaving it as is.
No, option A.
Oh, I'm sorry, option A. Yeah, the one that repaves it as is. There are some public safety concerns. Yeah, 40 seconds is 40 seconds. If I'm having a heart attack, 40 seconds is a long time. And then I really don't want big trucks or fire trucks or garbage trucks having to drive around other vehicles on the median. And that's just not going to look good, especially after it rains and you're going to have big mud ruts in it and stuff like that. But so I would support repaving it as is. But I really, really do thank you guys for all your efforts. And anytime that we do things like this or infrastructure, you always look for ways to make it better. And most of the time, I think y'all make it a lot better. But for somebody, I lived back in the neighborhoods way off of Walnut, and it was, I could see how I'd like this. I really do think it would make things look wonderful and possibly even improve property values in the area. But from a functional standpoint and livability, I wouldn't want to deal with it.
Okay, Ms. Bush.
Wow, you just said everything I was going to say. When I first saw this, I thought this is how, when I saw the picture, and we spoke at length, and staff has been phenomenal at answering all my questions as well. It looks like parts of Cary. It's what people expect, a nice planted median, nice streets, bike lane. It's even got the guy in the picture riding his bike down the bike lane, people walking on the sidewalks. I mean, that's what we all expect of Cary, except if you're one of those many, many houses along Walnut. So I drove out there and just parked at the Cary Art Center and walked up and down and saw how many people come in and out of all those businesses and thought, I don't know that I would want to make the U-turn either. And so I was struggling, really struggling with the value of improving this whole downtown. I mean, this is like going to be our gem. How nice would it be to improve the look on the way to downtown? But if it doesn't make any of the people that live downtown happy, why are we doing it? So the residents in that petition really spoke volumes to me. And I have to be honest, I'm swayed, have been swayed to the option A, even though I walked into this thinking how great would it be to have a median. But the residents have definitely swayed me over.
Okay. We had the same situation come up on Maynard many years ago on the southwest portion of Maynard. And at the time, we decided to not put in the median. And I have driven down that road, because I drive it every day, a couple times a day, and I have never stopped regretting that decision of not putting that median in there. Cars go very fast. The median definitely would have brought the speeds down, would have made it look much better. I think probably would have been a safer roadway than it is today with its current design. So it's with that perspective that I'm very cautious about moving forward and just deciding to not put in the median, because I think there are major benefits to the median. And I hear staff saying that the median would actually, in an engineer's perspective, make it safer. I think the real objection to this is the U-turn movement. I think people are not interested in doing the U-turn movement, and I think that's probably the biggest factor for their concern. I'm just wondering, staff, did you guys look into anything? I recently saw this device, it's called a cycle track, where you put in your bike lanes and then you put in a median, a thin median between the bike lane and the travel lane, and it wouldn't take up the full depth of what, or width of what you have at this median, and you could break it into short segments so that everybody has a driveway cut. Have you ever looked at anything like that? I mean, it would achieve the same idea as far as putting this on a road diet that you guys have talked about, narrowing it down, but still give it a better look and feel and really welcome the pedestrian traffic that we've talked about.
I have not considered specifically for this, but one of the reasons that we actually started looking at the median portion is because the pavement is in such bad condition that to actually resurface in that center turn lane, we're going to have to dig down 10 inches and put back 10 inches of asphalt. So that's where a lot of the cost comes from.
Oh, interesting.
So that's why putting in the median there is really a wash as far as cost.
Okay.
So something like you're suggesting would probably be more costly because we'd
you have to
do everything
dig out so
anyway.
much
Right.
and replace so much.
Exactly.
Okay. All right. Well, given the fact that we have two people who feel strongly against the staff recommendation and one person who's leaning towards the staff recommendation, we'll move this to the full council for discussion. That'll give citizens another opportunity to speak before the whole council. If they would like to, they can speak during the public speaks out portion, and this will be discussed at the end of the council meeting. So we will forward it for discussion to the full council.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, our next item, Mr. Collins, is the Cary Downtown Theater Operations Policy.
Good evening, councilors. As you have no doubt noticed, as you've driven down East Chatham Street, the Cary is rapidly approaching its completion, and as it comes to the end of its building process, we are moving into actually using the facility, and as such, it's appropriate for us to submit to you a policy for the operation of that facility, which you have in front of you. The policy is consistent in general with our other Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Resources facilities. In addition to the policy, we are asking that you approve initial operating hours, and we are also asking you to approve initial rental rates. Those latter two items would be addressed in subsequent years through the budget process and through standard operating procedures.
Okay. And in the staff recommendation, it says approval of policy statement, then it says XXX, the Cary Downtown Theater Operations Policy. Do we have a policy?
They get assigned a number once the policy is approved.
Oh, is that right? Okay. And where is the link for that policy?
That's what we're reviewing.
I mean,
Is that not
Yes,
the case?
you don't have, I mean, I'm sorry, I was expecting to see.
the link is in the executive summary. If you
Okay.
click where
I
it says
apologize.
attached. that'll
Ah,
take
there
you
it
to
is.
the
Okay.
policy.
Thank you. That's what I was
No
looking
problem.
for earlier. Okay. Ms. Bush, do you want to start the discussion?
I just have a couple of questions. You speak within the policy about interested parties for space at the theater that go along with this. I don't know if you can share with us if you have any interest of yet for any of the space that you've referenced within the policy?
You're talking about the upper two floors of the addition? That's actually being handled by Mr. Ted Boyd, the Downtown Development Manager, and he is in the process of developing requests for proposals for the use of those spaces.
And those spaces will be completed once a prospective leaser is interested in?
That's correct.
Okay. That was my only question.
Okay.
The policy is pretty much in line with all of our other venues
Yeah,
throughout
it's like-
town, so
It's very
I'm excited about it opening, getting it going. I mean, it's just no issues.
Okay. It looks very similar to what we have for the Cary Arts Center.
Correct.
Are there any changes, any deviations between what we have at the Cary Arts Center and this one that we should be aware of?
Well, the Cary Arts Center does have a section for resident groups because it's a full art center, so there are resident organizations, and this, because it's a smaller facility and the way it's operating purely as a facility, it doesn't have that opportunity or that option for resident organizational use in the same way that the art center does, but that's, other than that, everything else is the same.
Okay. All righty. Okay. Are you all in favor of the policy as well as the rates and the hours of operations that were presented?
Yes.
I am.
mean, this is, and it's an initial, I think it's one of those things staff will continue to review as time goes on, and we can make adjustments as needed, but I think this is a real good first start.
Okay. We'll
Thank
move it
you.
to the full council under consent for approval.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The last item is the follow-up to the council-initiated request to consider additional town boards and commissions. Ms. Rowland?
Good evening, committee members. This report follows up on council's direction to staff to develop options for you to potentially receive more advice from citizens in 4 areas. Number 1, bike, pedestrian, walkable community issues. Number 2, senior and aging issues. Number 3, disability issues. And number 4, historic preservation. A team of staff members from multiple departments worked together to prepare this one staff report to cover all 4 topics. We'll walk through the issues one at a time. Each issue includes a variety of options. So that you'll have the context of the fiscal impact of the options, let's first go over those impacts from low to high. Then, as we go through the individual topics, you'll have an understanding of the variety of what those fiscal impacts are. The following 3 options have no fiscal impact. Number 1, doing nothing. Number 2, directing existing boards to provide information to council on some of these topics. And number 3, changing membership criteria on some of our existing boards. Additionally, changing our board application to include identifying information to help you appoint a good mix of members to current boards has very minimal impact that existing staffing can accommodate. And finally, creating a temporary task force or a permanent ongoing board requires multiple staff from various departments to develop the framework for the group. Once that's done, it takes about 20 staff hours per month to support a task force, keeping in mind that task forces are limited in their duration. It takes about 12 staff hours every month to support an ongoing board. We'll take the bike, pedestrian, and walkable community topic first. The background and options are included in your staff report. The staff team believes that current processes, such as the rezoning process, provide you information on development-related issues pertaining to this topic. And our Planning and Zoning Board gives you advice on these development-related issues. The options in the staff report pertain to issues that are not related to development, which might include things such as long-range transportation planning, transit planning, and things like that. And at this time, we welcome your discussion and any input and recommendations that you have to offer on this particular topic.
One comment that I called Ms. Rowland about earlier today or yesterday was, since this was a pink sheet item for Mr. Urha, whatever we do here, even if it comes on consent, I was thinking, since we allowed the recycling to come back as a discussion item because it was your pink slip, I thought we'd give the same opportunity to Mr. Urha. So I just wanted to preface this whole discussion with that suggestion that no matter what, we
That's a good
leave it
idea.
for council discussion so that he can weigh in.
That sounds good.
I'll start on bike. You were just looking at me for that.
We have to do point, counterpoint.
We can, we can. First off, thank you very much for this staff report. I think whoever is the one who takes a great big bike and pedestrian description and narrows it down, taking out words is way harder than putting in words. So whoever netted that out, this is great. I happen to be a strong proponent of the bike and pedestrian and walkable communities, mostly around bike, and most of our neighboring cities and regionals all have bike and pedestrian. Raleigh, Durham, Chapel Hill, Wake Forest, many of them do, with the focus that we've heard from Imagine Cary, with so many people talking about the value of biking and of the value of our greenways and the value of connecting those so that people can use them for commuting. I think that we've heard a lot from our citizens that this is very important to them. So I'd be a strong proponent of actually item 4 or option 4, which is to implement an advisory board. It doesn't have to be a standalone one. It could be similar to our Greenway Board that is a subset of Parks and Rec, but I think we've heard it from a number of organizations and a number of citizens that that's important to them.
Okay, I was thinking along the same lines as, couldn't we just put this under Parks and Rec? I guess the question is, are the bikeways and pedestrian movements, are they transportation matters or are they park matters? And we've talked about that before.
They cross the line.
They cross the line, and I just wonder if you put it under parks, you're going to be looking at a different host of issues than if you were putting it under some kind of transportation.
Yeah.
And the prevailing question I have that we can maybe have answered to us before we come back and discuss it with the full council is whether this group would have a composition of work and issues to discuss. Because it needs to be more than having a group come together and say, yeah, we think there should be more bikeways, there should be more pedestrian movements. Is there actually work to be done that this board could take on? Because it's very frustrating when citizens are tasked to do something and then have nothing to do.
Mm-hmm.
So I would just want to make sure that we actually have work, and not just like a one-time work, which would then call for a task force, but something that would be ongoing where we could see an added benefit month to month from this board.
Agreed.
My first choice would be do nothing, but I'm willing to compromise. I would be interested or would entertain looking at our existing boards to see how we could alter the makeup of them to possibly, touch on this particular topic. To me, as well as Parks and Rec, I think this is the Environmental Advisory Board. I mean, the whole point of some of this walkability and multimodal transportation stuff is all, air quality and environmental protection and stuff. I mean, that's what everybody tells us.
Fingers in the air, it makes it sound like it really doesn't exist. Yeah. Air quality, go ahead.
So to me, I kind of want, isn't the EAB already talking about this kind of stuff? I mean, or are they just focusing on trees, bushes, and stormwater? We're going through a whole major Imagine Cary thing, which we have gotten a lot of input on. Folks have brought this up. Our land development ordinance addresses this. Anything that's developed, the developers have to put in the sidewalks or walking trails and greenways and stuff. We always love the connectivity discussion at the council tables and whatnot. So I could see maybe putting a member on Parks and Rec or EAB, but to me, it just seems like, I don't know why EAB is not already talking about this, but I think Cary leads the way in these efforts. We're constantly receiving awards on a lot of our efforts. We're one of those bike-friendly communities and stuff. I mean, I've seen the signs. So.
Yeah, but the signs are on roads that aren't actually bike-friendly, but
I was going to say, have you ever taken your bike out there?
Can't argue that. I mean,
They're
we
not
just
really-
we just talked about Walnut Street, that we just spent a lot of money putting a sidewalk on the other side for walkability and say, I mean, the town is doing a lot of these things already. I don't think that we need another board or commission. I actually agree with Ms. Robinson's comments that, what are they going to do? What are they going to talk about?
Well, I hear what you're saying, and we're going to talk about this at full council, but looking at what some of the other boards and commissions, the first question I always ask myself is, what is the problem we're trying to solve, right? And the problem that I have brought up a couple of times as being somebody who does use my bike for commuting is that there are many places within the town that aren't bike-friendly. And we have now numerous places as we move forward where we need to connect greenways to some bike-friendly places so that families that want to go out and ride their bike safely don't have to put the bikes on the back of the car and then drive to the park to ride the greenway. They can actually find a safe route to actually ride their bike to get there. So the bike and pedestrian area isn't just about environmental, it's about health issues, it's about promoting bike safety. A lot of the bike and pedestrian groups do a lot with their Parks and Rec and with public safety individuals to promote bike safety, get kids to understand the rules of the road on their bike, to do a lot of bike maintenance types of things. Other bike and pedestrian groups actually are similar to the way some of our other groups, they review some planning and zoning. Remember, years ago, we had wonderful Stephen Goodridge on P&Z, a bike enthusiast who was always the guy looking at the, sidewalk issues and the bike issues. We've kind of lost some of that focus. I'm not saying that there's a problem today. I'm saying there's more an opportunity and a way to become more bike friendly, because although we're bronze maybe or silver, I think we should be gold. Or I think that there's so many cyclists in this area that want us to make this a safer and more bike-friendly community, that I think there'll be plenty of work for them to do. And maybe part of what we need to do is to create that work effort and that work program.
Well, I think two things based on that. I think that this might just be a timing issue, because for that to occur, I think two things ought to be done. One, I think the Envision Cary process should be completed, because I think it'll establish the goals of the community. But then the second thing is I think the council needs to create a policy that states that we are prioritizing this effort, and with that would need to be funds, because it would be terrible for us to say, hey, we love, bikeways, go at it, advisory board, and they come back and say, you ought to do this, you ought to do that, but we have no money that is set aside to address those things. So I think we need to kind of get our ducks in a row and make sure that we're set up to actually have a functioning board that will tackle these matters.
I think we'll need the board before we need the money. The board's going to tell us what we need, and then it'll go in the next budget.
I think we need
for the money.
I think we need the policy first, because if we have a council that says, yes, we're all behind this and we understand there's fiscal implications, then you can go have a board say, we recommend you do this and that. It would be terrible for us to bring people together. They come up with all these recommendations, then we look at them and go, oh, we don't have any money for
Kind
that.
of like with the
Technology
task force.
Yes,
did?
absolutely.
But see, I think that's a little bit different. And by the way, I agree with you. The technology task force recommendations are coming into the next budget cycle. I mean, I've seen them start to come in. I think you're right, but I think you need the list, you need the policy, and you need the work items before you can budget it, because you don't know how they're going to prioritize them.
I just think we need to be very careful. I've served on 2 boards where the members did not have enough work to perform, and one was the Appearance Commission back in the early 2000s, and the other one was the Economic Development Commission, and both of those commissions struggled to find enough work to do, and the members became very frustrated. We ended up doing away with both of those boards because they didn't have real projects to work on, a real composition of work to tackle, and nothing ongoing. I mean, the EDC came up with something initially, and then after that, they kind of looked around and go, now what? So I think we need to think through this.
I think those issues are probably what we're going to talk about for each one of these. Fiscal, policy, is there enough work?
We've got to set up, we've got to have a policy behind this before we move forward.
Well, we've got, to expand on your point, we also had Town Center Review Commission. Downtown was so important to us, we needed to create a citizen advisory board to help us out. We got rid of the board a couple of years later because it wasn't effective and it was duplicative of P&Z. We had the Issues Advisory, CIRC, Citizens Issue Review Commission, that had nothing to do, and we ended up disbanding that board. So I think the town is doing a lot of what you want us to do more of. I don't know that, I do not believe that creating a full-time board is the way to go about this. Task force to maybe point out some of your concerns or map out all of our areas through town that aren't very bike-friendly or need improvements or need connections, maybe. a different position on existing boards to continue to bring these issues, make sure they're always considered and thought of when decisions are made. Okay. A standalone board for pedestrian and walkability or bike and walkability, no.
Yeah, I think even like with your Steve Goodridge comment, I mean, I think we could even direct P&Z to consider these matters specifically as they review each case, and that might address that one aspect of it, although staff says that it's already being addressed pretty well under the development review process. But, you know, I'm not sure that we need the board at this time. It's not a no forever, but I don't know that at this point it has value. But let's go ahead and send it to the full council for discussion, especially since Ed was the one who brought it forward, and we'll see how everybody kind of weighs in on it.
Our next issue is the senior and aging topic, and you've had an opportunity to read the full report, which includes various options, and we're happy to hear your comments, discussion, and any recommendations on that particular topic at this time.
Okay.
My comments would be very similar to what the discussion we just had, although I will say I do believe this to be a little bit more of a pressing issue for Cary than the pedestrian and walkable stuff. Cary is very rapidly becoming a place that seniors are moving to and retiring to, and people that live in Cary are staying in Cary, and when they, you know, hit that age where they might want to move into a different type of living facility, you know, we need to make sure we have that. I do think staff is doing a good job on trying to address the issue. I think a lot of this is coming out in the Imagine Cary process. I just don't know that we need another full-time board to work on this. On Parks and Rec, as the board I serve as liaison to, I almost felt like we always had a member to bring these issues to our attention with Kay Streffolino. Kay Streffolino, unfortunately, is turned off the board, but she was also the senior center liaison to Parks and Rec, and she provided a lot of valuable insight to the board. So having another board member like that, I think, would be valuable. I just don't know that we need another standalone board or commission.
An interesting perspective is just put in a criteria that we want to have at least one senior citizen on that board.
Mm-hmm. And maybe not just Parks and Rec. I mean, I think planning and zoning, our development type stuff, you know, we're seeing a lot of developments coming into Cary, senior retirement living type stuff.
I think that's a very innovative approach. For me, the Triangle J Council of Government study that will be executed soon, I think will be very revealing for us and help us understand what our needs are and some of our areas that we want to focus on. A difference here between the last item is that 2 years ago at our staff retreat, we set making livability for seniors as our highest priority. And so I think that we already have that statement to our council or to our staff that we want to prioritize this. I would be more open to having a committee that addresses senior livability, but I would be inclined to pair it up with the disability piece, the committee for issues affecting people with disabilities, because sometimes there are similarities as far as being able to maneuver around like curbs and stuff like that. So I'd be inclined maybe to put those together and seeing if there's a benefit there, but that's just my opinion. What's yours?
Well, we originally called, in one of our brainstormings, we had done that same thing and called that group of individuals special populations that included people with disabilities, senior citizens, you know, a number of different types of populations, and that crossed not just livability, but it also includes economic development opportunities. There's all types of businesses that are moving here to provide senior citizens new services. So I think this one is broad. It's not just about giving senior citizens, having them review some of our plans to make sure it's easily walkable, or you know, have activities, extra activities in our Parks and Rec, or making sure our senior center is robust. But it's more than just that. It can be economic development and all types of activities. I actually have heard from a number of seniors separately, and 2 years ago, while I was running, that they wanted more of a voice. And even suggested that creating a senior council, like we have a teen council.
Like the Cary Teen Council.
Right? Just an opportunity also for them to give back too.
Yeah.
So I think there is value to having a senior commission. I would have to have other people to ask the question about whether or not it's the right thing to combine them, because there are some unique
Differences.
differences that might be pulled out, but not being in that population, I really want someone to speak to that.
Okay. All right. I think, again, like the last one, let's forward it to the full council for discussion. I think everybody's going to want to weigh in on this, but noting that at least two of us see value in having a committee, and there's some alternate ideas presented for how to address having a senior voice. Okay, historic preservation.
Let's save that for last.
All righty, let's go on.
If you don't mind, let's talk about the disability
Yeah.
issues next. You've read in the report that the staff team looked at 3 different categories pertaining to this issue. Category 1 is the town-owned built environment and accessibility. And our Public Works Director is the town's ADA officer, and he addresses this specifically for town-owned facilities and amenities. Category 2 is communication, and our current Information Services Advisory Board provides council advice on communication issues. And Category 3 is programming. And this fiscal year, council approved the new Specialized Recreation and Inclusion Specialist position. This new staff member is on board and has begun extensive community outreach to develop programming for our citizens with disabilities. The options are included in your staff report, and staff does caution that at this point, a task force or a permanent board would likely result in our new staff person reprioritizing time and duties to support the group, and instead of spending that amount of time creating new programming. With that in mind, I'm open to your comments, discussion, and feedback on this particular topic.
Okay. Who wants to start?
Well, I can start, at least give some history of where this came from. An organization that was started during the Ernie McAllister time when he was mayor, called the Mayor's Council on Disabilities, I believe.
Mayor's Task Force on
Mayor's Task Force on Disabilities, thank you. Has been meeting on their own, using town facilities, and have been doing some great things, highlighting to staff and working with staff on some of the things that they found, highlighting areas where some of our buildings need compliance. I see Scott shaking his head. They've even worked directly with businesses to help the businesses be aware of some of their committee members and some of their challenges. So I know from a historical perspective where some of this request has come from. They would like to do a lot of this in a more official capacity, because they're not necessarily a board or commission recognized by the town, but doing it somewhat on their own and providing great value to the town. So I'll just leave it at that. I definitely see some added value, especially as our ranks increase, as we grow as a population. Just in general, obviously that population grows as well.
My comments would be the same on the previous.
Okay. All right. Let's go ahead and forward it to the council for discussion since it's divided. Okay, last one.
Our final topic, let's go back to historic preservation. There are a number of government agencies that play a role in historic preservation, and a variety of ways the council may choose to approach that issue. North Carolina general statutes stipulate mandatory legal requirements that apply to these types of regulatory commissions. As you can tell from the staff report, these issues are numerous and complex, and the commission operates in a quasi-judicial manner. Staff recommends that council discuss this topic at a future work session as soon as possible after the council staff retreat. At the work session, you'll have more time to weigh the pros and cons of each option in detail before making any decisions on how to proceed or choosing a method moving forward. What comments or questions do you have about that?
I think that would be fine. Given the level of discussion I think all of these are going to garner, it might not be a bad idea to move all of these over to a work session and let us discuss them in a work session. I'd be open to other people's perspectives, but I think that's a good idea for the historic preservation one.
Yes, the only question I had was in the staff report, the fact that our historic preservation master plan actually recommended the creation of this commission. Does that impact what we're doing here? Was that on track anyway, or is it just speeding up that process?
Is Mr. Olma here? I'll let him answer that question.
It is already on track. So as one of the first steps was conducting our inventory, and that's being wrapped up. And so in the master plan, there were a series of implementation steps with sort of a time frame, and this is a next logical step that fits in with the sequencing that was recommended in the plan. We might be 6 months behind it or something in that order, but we're pretty much on track with that. So it would have been something that would have been brought forward to council fairly soon anyway.
Okay, because when I pulled up the plan, it said it was targeted for sometime 2013. That's why I wanted to ask. Thank you.
We're still there.
So far, you got a couple weeks.
Also, I would add that one reason you see in the staff report that there's a recommendation for historic preservation is because of the existence of the plan. It's real clear. Council has adopted that. It contains that recommendation, so we felt like that was what council at some point in time was looking at, and since it came up this time, that's why we recommended the creation of this one. The others have come up variously through council comments and discussions at work sessions and other forums. But since they were not backed by a plan or any other previous discussion or direction from council, that's why we left those more open-ended for council to discuss and give direction.
All right. So that item we'll go ahead and plan on talking about in a work session. So that we can prepare our council, do we think that this is an appropriate conversation for us to have about each of these in the council meeting, or would you all like to discuss these at a future work session instead?
I have no problem discussing all four of them at the council meeting. I mean, I was going to talk about historic preservation, but if you don't want to.
Lori?
I'm open to either.
Okay. Well, let's go
Again,
ahead.
I want to hear what Ed has to say.
Okay, let's go ahead and move it to the council for discussion, and at that point, we can decide whether or not we want to vote on it or move it to a work session. Okay. With the completion of that item, I believe we are done with the Operations Committee. This concludes the Operations Committee for good, right?
Sure. Oh, for good.
This has been a production of Cary TV. Visit the Town of Cary's website at townofcary.org.